August 19th, 14. A 75-year-old man lies on his deathbed in Nola. He isn't asking about his empire, his legions, or his legacy. He asks his friends a chilling question. Have I played my part in the farce of life well enough? If life was a play, he was its most terrifying actor. He wasn't just an emperor. He was the world's first master of soft power manipulation. This is the story of how Octavian, a sickly teenager, transformed into Augustus, a god king, through a psychological operation that lasted 40 years. Welcome to Psyche of Power. Today, we unmask the dictatorship of Augustus. To understand the mask, we must understand the trauma that forged it. Octavian was never a warrior. He was a strategist of the mind. After Caesar's assassination, Rome didn't need another general. It needed a psychopath who could look like a savior. Our first cognitive reversal. We think of Augustus as the bringer of peace, but he began as a butcher. The proscriptions weren't just political cleaning. They were a psychological experiment in learned helplessness. By murdering the elite, Octavian didn't just remove rivals. He destroyed the very concept of resistance. But he realized a fundamental truth of human psychology. You can't rule by fear forever. Fear is exhausting. To truly own a man, you must make him choose his own chains. This is where we introduce our first psychological concept, cognitive reframing. He didn't call himself dictator. That word carried the scent of Caesar's blood. Instead, he chose princeps. First among equals. It is the ultimate semantic lie. It's the illusion of choice used in modern marketing. By rejecting the crown, he made the power invisible, and invisible power is the hardest to fight. He understood the availability cascade. If you repeat a lie often enough with enough beautiful imagery, it becomes the only reality people can imagine. The citizens weren't stupid. They were exhausted. They traded their liberty for the end of history. Augustus didn't destroy the republic. He restored it. He kept the Senate, the consuls, the elections, but he emptied them of all meaning. This is the Panopticon. Unlike Foucault's Panopticon, where the state watches you, the Panopticon is where you watch a spectacle so bright you can't see the state. Let's look at his rivalry with Mark Antony. It wasn't a war between two men. It was a war of othering. Octavian didn't attack Antony's politics. He attacked his identity. He framed Antony as a man who had lost his Romanus. This is the social identity theory in action. By making the enemy the other, Octavian made himself the ultimate Roman. Whether the will was real or a forgery doesn't matter. In the psychology of power, truth is whatever serves the narrative. Cognitive reversal. 1. We assume people want freedom. History proves they actually want certainty. Augustus provided the ultimate psychological sedative, the Pax Romana. He spent money on infrastructure like a modern tech mogul. He understood that a full stomach is the best muzzle for a loud mouth. This is halo effect manipulation. If the city looks divine, the man who built it must be a god. Look at the Arapacis. It's not just art. It's a psychological anchor. It associates his regime with the natural order of the universe. He weaponized the family unit. He passed laws against adultery and rewarded those with many children. Why? Because a moral society is a predictable society, and a predictable society is easy to govern. But behind the marble, there was the architecture of silence. Here is our second deep psychological concept: preference falsification. In public, everyone praised Augustus. In private, they were paralyzed. When everyone lies, no one knows who to trust. This destroyed the possibility of a coup. You can't conspire with someone if you don't know their true thoughts. But there is a price to being the world's greatest gaslighter, and that price is the dissociation of the self. Augustus lived in a state of permanent performance. He had to be the perfect Roman, the perfect father, the perfect God. His own daughter, Julia, became the victim of the very morality he engineered. He chose his mask over his own flesh and blood. This is the tragedy of soft power. When you manipulate everyone, you end up with no one. Caesar died because he was too honest about his power. Augustus survived because he was a professional liar. The system he created, the Principate, required him to work 18 hours a day, managing every detail of the world. He became a bureaucrat of the soul. He realized that to control a world, you must first bury yourself in its paperwork. Let's talk about the secular games. A massive 3-day festival he revived to signal a new age. This was collective priming. He used sensory overload, music, smell, spectacle to reset the Roman consciousness. He wasn't just giving them a show. He was rewriting their temporal orientation. The past was blood, the future was Augustus. He called it a return to tradition. But it was a radical revolution dressed in a grandfather's clothes. Notice the Cupid. It claims he is descended from the goddess Venus. This is the authority bias. If God says the dictator is right, who are you to argue with the heavens? He even used omens. He publicized every comet or strange birth as a sign of his legitimacy. Logic doesn't rule the world, narrative does, and Augustus was the world's greatest storyteller. But even gods bleed. In 90, 3 legions were wiped out in Germany. He screamed, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions!" This is the fragility of the perfect image. When a god fails, the psychological shock is 10 times worse. For the first time, the mask slipped. The peace was a lie. Rome was still vulnerable. How did he respond? He didn't apologize. He tightened the grip. This is the sunk cost fallacy of a nation. They had given up so much for him that they couldn't afford to believe he was failing. He had built a system where the truth was no longer necessary, only the appearance of truth. Let's look at our third deep concept, the narcissism of small differences. Augustus kept the Senate busy with trivialities. He let them feel powerful by debating small things, while he controlled the army and the grain. This is how you pacify an elite. Give them the ego, boost of office without the actual power of the state. He was the shadow in the room, always present, never seen. He expanded treason laws to include words against the emperor. Soft power always has a sharp edge. It's a velvet glove, but the hand inside is made of cold, uncompromising iron. By centralizing everything, he destroyed the civic virtue that had made Rome strong. When the state does everything for you, you lose the psychological muscle to do anything for yourself. He turned a nation of soldiers into a nation of subjects. This is the psychological trap of security. We think we want safety, but safety without agency is just a comfortable prison. His greatest failure was the one thing he couldn't manipulate, the future. By building a system that relied on one great man, he ensured that the next small man would ruin it. The soft power of Augustus became the harder tyranny of his successors. Have I played my part well? He knew he was a fraud. He knew the Augustus people loved didn't exist. His final words weren't about Rome. They were about a performance. When he died, the mask didn't fall. It became the face of the Western world. We still live in the world Augustus built, a world of managed democracy and manufacturing consent. We are still being primed. We are still being reframed. We are still choosing the lesser evil. The greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he didn't exist. The greatest trick Augustus played was convincing Rome he was its servant. Power is not about the sword. It is about the soul. If you can control what people believe, you don't need to control what they do. Augustus is dead, but the masked dictatorship is very much alive. Look around. Do you see the farce? Subscribe if you're ready to see the truth behind the power. This is Psyche of Power. See you in the next autopsy.